Today's question is simple, but the answer might surprise you. How much do you need to save to spend $5,000 per month in retirement? I want to step through a process that I think you can apply on your own, whether you want to spend $5,000, $7,000, or $9,000 per month. So stick around. Hi, I'm Scott. I was a college professor for many years, and now I teach couples like you that are close to retirement how to understand and manage your finances so that you can thrive in the next chapter. Let's meet our couple, Linda and Jerry. They're both 62. They want to retire at age 65. They plan to live to age 92. They want to spend $5,000 per month, and so they're curious, how much do they need to have saved in their retirement accounts by the time that they retire? Well, to do this calculation, we're going to consider 4 factors: inflation, taxes, Social Security and other forms of income, and then a calculation strategy to figure out how much to have saved. Let's start with inflation. Now, they want to spend $5,000 per month that first year. But as expenses increase due to inflation, we need to account for that, because if we're not careful, we'll get lost. In fact, by year 24, when Linda and Jerry are in their late 80s, I suppose, that $5,000 per month has now risen to $10,000 per month for inflation. Social Security. How much are they going to get from Social Security and perhaps other forms of fixed income? Maybe they have a pension, maybe they have some nice rental income, but for them, we'll just assume Social Security, and they're going to get, between the two of them, $3,000 per month. Now, this might be $1,500 for one and $1,500 for the other. This might be $2,000 for one and $1,000 as spousal benefits, but $3,000 per month in fixed income for them. Now, this is important because we want to know how much do we have to withdraw from our savings each and every month to supplement that fixed income. Finally, we need to take into consideration taxes. Now, in this particular scenario, $60,000 with more than half coming from Social Security isn't going to have much of a federal tax requirement. What we don't know is what their state taxes will be. Now, most states do not tax Social Security, while many tax IRA distributions or pension payments. So you'll need to do a little research in your own state. But in my home state of Michigan, they do not tax for Social Security or pension payments. So I'm going to stick with $5,000 per month for this simple example. You might have to raise yours up a little bit to account for taxes. Maybe add 10%, $500 per month. But to keep the math simple in this example, we're going to stick with they need to spend $5,000 per month after taxes. Now, to the calculation. So here's what we need to do. They want to spend $5,000 per month. $3,000 is going to be paid for by Social Security, so that leaves $2,000 per month they need to withdraw from their savings. Now, $2,000 times 12 months is $24,000 a year they need to be able to safely withdraw from their retirement accounts. Well, we're going to look at 3 different calculations or 3 different strategies to figure out what that amount should be. The first one, you've heard it, the 4% rule. 4% rule says during that first year of retirement, you can afford to take 4% of your total nest egg out, and then from that point forward, add inflation to the mix. So notice this calculation does account for inflation that we mentioned is an important factor. So what would be 4%? How much do we need to have saved if we can afford 4%? In this case, we want to withdraw $24,000 from our savings. So to do the math, 4% is 1 over 25. So we need to multiply the yearly amount times 25, or 25x. So 25 times the yearly amount of $24,000, that's how much we want to withdraw each year, is $600,000. So this calculation using the 4% rule says that Linda and Jerry need to have saved $600,000 by the time that they retire. Okay, well, that's a number. However, it's been my experience that the 4% rule is a little too conservative. What I mean by that is in most cases, the vast majority of cases, people will die at the end having too much extra money by using the 4% rule. So 4%, that's our first calculation. Our second strategy is to use financial planning software that uses a special strategy called Monte Carlo simulation. Now, I won't go into the details too much, other than to say it's a pretty sophisticated software program that takes into account statistics and the history of the stock market. Now, we know the stock market sometimes is up a little, sometimes it's down a little, sometimes it's up a lot, sometimes it's down a lot. Well, this Monte Carlo simulation factors all that in to say, on average, here is what the results should be over the next 30 years. And when I do that calculation, Monte Carlo tells me Linda and Jerry should save $450,000, not the $600,000, so perhaps a little more manageable for them, $450,000. All right, so that's the second strategy. Well, the Monte Carlo simulation doesn't really help you much at home if you don't have access to that software. So I thought, what is another strategy you could do? And I said, 4%'s a little too cautious, perhaps. What is 5%? So I'm going to dub this the 5% rule. Somebody probably already called it that, but all right. And so 5% is 1 over 20. So to do this calculation, we're going to multiply our annual goal, $24,000, times 20, and we get $480,000. So interestingly, $480,000 using the 5% rule is certainly lower than the 4% rule, which makes sense. And it's just a little bit more than the Monte Carlo simulation. So that tells me I'm pretty confident, I'm pretty satisfied with this 5% withdrawal during this first year. Now, this assumes that you, as the retiree, can start with that and recognize that every few years you might have to readjust a little bit. Depending on how the stock market has done well or not, you might be able to spend a little more than that, or you might have to cut back a little bit. But I think a 5% is probably a pretty good starting point. So there are your 3 strategies to calculate how much you need to have saved. The 4% rule, the more sophisticated Monte Carlo simulation, and the less sophisticated 5% rule. I make these videos so that you can understand and manage your own finances, reduce taxes during retirement, clarify your retirement goals, and avoid costly mistakes. As an advice-only planner, I don't manage people's investments. I don't charge expensive AUM fees. And I don't ask you to move your funds or your money to my company. That's just too much of a commitment. But what I do for a flat fee is provide objective advice and a second opinion. We work together to create a custom retirement plan that includes actions you can take today to ensure that your retirement in the future is what you want it to be. So follow the link down below in the description, learn more about me and my process, and if interested, schedule a free consultation call. Until then.